Now, with the majority of people having to work and study from home, the need for one to maintain a work-life balance has become an absolute necessity. And one of the key points to keeping this balance is setting some boundaries which can become somewhat blurred as time goes by. So how can we go about regaining a sense of balance in our lives once again? I'm joined in studio by NLP practitioner and nutritionist Nikki Robertson to give us some tips on how to unblur your boundaries and find a work-life balance. Welcome, Nikki. So nice to have you with us.
Thanks, Mike.
Now, Nikki, in terms of this work-life balance that we speak of, why is it that it's so important, especially now that physically we're working at home where our lives happen most of the time?
So I think, a lot of us know that we've got to find some balance. People have forever brought home work with them and have felt the impact, how it impacts their relationships, their sleep levels. And now in 2020, when everything was merged, or completely merged, we've had the sensation of work encroaching into our private spaces like never before and not knowing how to turn it off for various reasons. One being the fear of losing your job. So to be seen to be productive, to be seen to be always available and online is a natural response, I think, in the beginning, because there was nothing else to do, frankly.
Yeah.
We had no other option. So we worked, and the brain just doesn't play the game when that happens. So the brain, actually, we can't really focus for more than around 40 minutes.
Okay.
And the brain can't multitask, no matter what anyone thinks. So we need to really learn how to focus on one thing at a time and have lots of breaks. And that is fine to say that, but in practice it's a whole other story. Also, the brain needs compartments, so it compartmentalizes naturally. That's why Pinterest is so popular, because we love little boxes. So there should be a box for work, there should be a box for play, and there should be a box for rest. So for instance, working in your bedroom is probably the very worst thing you can do for your psychology, for your sleep levels, and for your stress management.
I suppose you've got an environment, and your bedroom should be a place to sleep. Your office is a place to work. So those are boundaries. Let's talk about boundaries for a second, because I mean, there's physical boundaries, and then obviously there are mental and psychological boundaries. How do we create or differentiate between those, and how do we take the most advantage of setting up and maintaining these boundaries?
Sure. So first step is consciousness, knowing that you should not work in your bedroom, or you need to find, even if you live in a small apartment, some place that is just there for your laptop.
Even if it's just like a little desk in
a corner that has a specific viewpoint, so that when you turn around and you've got a different viewpoint, your brain can have a break. And like you say, it's a physical boundary, but the brain is a physical organ, and it translates into neurochemistry. So when we can see something different, have literally a different viewpoint and different audio stimulus, so you put down the headphones and you close that laptop, your brain perceives it as a break. And it can create different neurochemistry, which will help you function better. But what's happened over the last couple of months is we've disregarded this. But not only that, so we've got this work function that's encroached into what should be our private space and private time, but we've got the added pressure of perhaps being a school teacher for our children. So we've got that urgency, and also when you've got kids around you, your attention is never focused on the task at hand. You're always separated, which causes stress in and of itself. Then we've got the pressure of finances, of having to cook, of all these things that are compounded into a space that should be your home and should be your free time and should represent downtime for you. So where before we knew we needed work-life balance, now it's become almost a chronic need for so many people.
And also you mentioned the school teaching, worrying about finances, worrying about keeping your job, all of these things in your space that was, as you say, a relaxing space. Now it's all there in the space, but it seems to be that it's there all the time. So I read an interesting article about time chunking, which I thought was quite interesting, setting boundaries of time where you are in contact, where you aren't in contact. How would you set up something like that, or help your clients to set up a space for everything and everything in its place?
So aside from setting up the physical space of this is your workspace, this is your recreation space, you need to sit down with your diary and block out time chunks this is what I'm dedicating my time to meetings, and they've got to be non-negotiable. It's so easy to override what you've committed to. And that is teaching people, not only teaching yourself how to set boundaries, but teaching other people in your life how to treat you.
Yes.
And this is something a lot of us struggle with. Whatever boundaries there are, whether it's relational boundaries, our boundaries with our children, is to sit down and have a conversation with them and say, and your colleagues and your boss, and say, I will not work past this time for these reasons, and this is because I'm not productive. If I go past this time, there's resentment, there's exhaustion, there's things that stop me from making good decisions or creative problem solving. Our ability to solve problems creatively diminishes over time. You've only got about, I would hazard a guess, 2 hours of a day where you can really make a creative decision that's going to benefit everybody in your life. So you really need to be strict about sitting down with everybody in your life for the good of everyone and saying, these are work times, these are down times, and we don't go past that.
I suppose if you think about it, in an office, for those of you lucky enough not to work in an open plan space, but you can close the door.
Yes.
But also at the same time in the office, you have these breaks in the time where you're speaking to colleagues, you're chatting, you're getting a cup of coffee. So inadvertently, you've got these chunks of time, but at home, it feels like you've got to be always on. So if you're not doing something, as you say, not being seen to do something, you feel this obligation. And it's almost honoring yourself by putting your foot down and saying no.
Yes, and you're enabling other people to do the same in their lives, because I can promise you, your colleagues are feeling the same, your boss is feeling the same. But because the next person is always online, we feel the pressure to keep up. But if somebody had to stand up and say, I can't do this, everybody else would also go, you know what, I can't either.
I agree,
Let's make a decision as a company, as an organization, that we're going to be strict about respecting each other's spaces. It's bad enough having cameras on in your home. So I think, that's the way we've got to start thinking about things.
And what are the psychological implications of this blurring? Because, I mean, obviously, you're on a constant, there's an element of stress always. There's cortisol that's always running through your body. How is it physically and from a health perspective impacting people?
So when we are always on, we're creating adrenaline and we are disturbing our circadian rhythms. And our circadian rhythms are critically important for stress management, for hormone production, for insulin regulation. So, and also it's really easy to just go to the fridge and eat whatever's there. So while we're in a state of stress and heightened cortisol, heightened adrenal fatigue, what we eat talks to our biology very differently. So we store fat more readily. And what you said about having coffee breaks, having smoke breaks, these things, a lot of people have said to me, I now miss the traffic because it was time for me to listen to a show and be by myself. And when you're at home with your spouse and your kids and your colleagues online, you've never got alone time.
Absolutely.
Solitude is so important for the brain from a chemical point of view, because that's how we sort out problems. That's how we ruminate and come to peace with. You need to remove yourself from a problem to see it clearly, and in that environment we can't do that. So it does create all sorts of chemistry that creates inflammation in the brain and inflammation in the body, and then we relate to people on a very different level. We snap at them, we're less patient with them, we don't want to be, and we hear ourselves doing this and we go, oh my goodness, what's going on? This is a normal response to an abnormal situation we've all found ourselves in. And the only way it's going to stop is when someone says, we can't do this. We've got to collectively...
The system breaks first and then you got to fix it.
Yes, we've got to collectively make a decision to do this differently for everybody's sanity, our families included.
It's very interesting that, I mean, you talk about missing the traffic. I took to walking around the block before I start working, just to get a break again from morning routines and work time, but also to stop and look at the flowers, and just breathe the fresh air and things like that.
Exactly. And I think, that kind of perspective that we've got, well, maybe the traffic wasn't so bad. Maybe, getting into an office where it's a segmented area is not so bad. It's given us a lot of perspective.
Absolutely. Speaking of office and school life and things like that, what are you seeing in terms of corporations and schools, in fact, doing to help alleviate some of this blurring of work and life along the way? So
the organizations that I work with are quite, fortunately, they're quite conscious of these things. It's very difficult when you've got upper management and executive management for people to switch off, because there's huge responsibility, and unless these problems are solved, they're not going to go away. But they're also realizing and seeing how badly people are being affected by not being able to switch off. So yes, there are definitely companies that are saying, you know, we're not having meetings after 5 p.m.
Yes.
And being more rigid about that. Yep, maybe start earlier. And for some people, getting up early and starting early works much better for them. It works for me. I mean, I can start at 5 a.m., but I will finish by 4 p.m. or 3 p.m. So finding that place in your life where it just flows better, it's not a bad idea to start asking those questions, because you may find that other people go, you know what, I'd rather talk to you at 6 a.m. than 6 p.m. anyway.
And then you can get it done and move on with the rest of the day.
And we feel so much better about things. So if we can boost each other's sense of we can get through this together, then we're also going to boost that collective endorphin management in the brain, and people are going to be healthier, and we're more friendly to each other, and we're patient with each other. So it's about having conversations about managing the situation better.
Absolutely. So let's talk, we don't have too much time left, but just a couple of key things. You have mentioned a few in terms of creating space and time and things. What would you say are the fundamental things for somebody who's watching who thinks, sure, you know, I've got to do something? What would the first step be, and maybe the first couple of things to just get them to find those boundaries again?
I think being protective about your sleep times. Sorry. So being more careful about the fact that you should be getting 8 hours of sleep a night and getting your deep sleep in, because when you're working from home and you're not getting up at 5 a.m. to go to an office, it's very easy to go, I'm just going to watch a movie. When it gets to bed at 11 or 12, you are missing the sleep train. You are disturbing your circadian rhythms. And that is really, really, really bad for your brain health. So if there's just one thing, and it's probably the hardest thing to get right, is to get good quality sleep. And I think it's something that most people battle with. If there's just one thing you can work on, it's make sure you're in bed at a reasonable time, make sure that you're getting 8 hours of sleep, make sure that you're switching off at least an hour before bedtime, so that, and it's not, I don't really believe it's the light intensity that's causing a problem with circadian rhythms. It's more the content that we are exposing ourselves to that keep the brain ruminating. So if you are dealing with a crisis before bed, good luck sleeping. I mean, that's not going to happen. But if you're watching a comedy and you're letting things go and you're having a good laugh and you are solving problems on a more relaxed level, your chance of getting good sleep is much, much higher.
Okay, fantastic. Well, there you go. Thank you so much, Nikki. Always lovely to chat to you. And I know for myself as well, this is a great discussion, because it is a time where it's difficult to maintain it, but as long as you make a bit of effort to do it, we should be okay.